Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Ellie Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome, Dr. Charlie.
Thank you, Eli. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
I'm sitting here with Dr. Charlie Powell, which we won't do any edification. We'll let you do that job. I think you'll do it well. I was introduced to you by Danny Resnick, who's sat in this chair a couple of times.
Yes.
You were on his podcast. I saw enough of it to say, I think a conversation with you would be worthwhile. So
cool, man.
Let's jump right in. Give us your background, your story.
I'll try to do the elevator version. I don't want to bore anybody, but I had a guy tell me once that I'd lived a Forrest Gump life. And I said, a box of chocolates? He was like, yeah, you've had a lot of lifetimes in your life. And I have. I was originally, I went off to school to become a biomedical engineer. I was getting pretty far in that program. I ran out of money from my parents, who were a secretary and a doctor. Secretary and a teacher. And
where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. And so born and raised there, same house until I moved out, leaving college, right? And I had to join the Army to pay for undergrad. They have the GI Bill. It's great. And I thought, hey, there hasn't been a war in a long time. This is 1988. And right about the time that I graduated from advanced individual training as a 91 Bravo combat medic, that day, Operation Desert Shield became Operation Desert Storm. And a 19-year-old boy had to grow up pretty fast. So I served for 4 years in the Army, and I went and got my undergrad degree. I switched to pre-med and got accepted to medical school, had high scores, got a scholarship into the Navy, transferred there. Navy paid for medical school, and came out the other side and served till 2005. I ended right about the time the Afghanistan conflict started to get hot. I had 4 years till a pension, but my wife's like, hey, I don't want the threat of being a single mom anymore. And I was double boarded at the time, and she was like, they can send you anywhere, anytime, and you don't say no. I'm like, well, I can't. It's the military. But I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed family medicine, which was my original training, but I really enjoyed trauma ER. It was a bit of an adrenaline rush for me. But in that time, I left in 2005 to provide a better life for my family. I moved to Dallas, Texas.
Can you bring us into a little bit of what that is, the trauma ER? Where was that? Was that in a traditional hospital? And
I'm glad to talk about some generals that I've been in, but it was multiple. It was deployments. It was a combination of some civilian hospitals. I spent some time at Shands Hospital in Jacksonville. I had a wonderful time, wonderful training there, great stories. But what's interesting is when I left in 2005, when I left the military, it was about 2006 or 7, I started really scaling and building the business in North Texas, building the healthcare system. But I started noticing the isolation. I started noticing early PTSD symptoms, which eventually was diagnosed and treated.
On your side?
On my side, yes. And it was interesting because 18 years of medications, and look, I'm not knocking the providers or people at the VA. I'm knocking the system. I'm knocking why aren't we paying more attention to things, and I'll get into that. But basically, 3 years ago this May, I sold this big healthcare system off to a very big insurance company. And you would think after that kind of money and that kind of success in the American dream, I should be happy, but I was the most miserable I was in my life. I basically, in that period of time, had also gotten triple boarded and was working on my fourth board, my fourth specialty. But because that's why I like In Search of More. I was always in search of more understanding and learning. But after I sold to the larger healthcare group, health insurance company, I walked away from it all. I went and found healing with Ibegan, 18 years of medication, one of which had developed a central nervous system tremor in me so bad I couldn't operate anymore, which is now gone. Put me at peace like that. So came out the other side of it, just thinking to myself, why after 26 years, why in the world did I not know about this? I ran a healthcare group, healthcare system, was with one of the largest healthcare systems in the world that I sold it to. I was very educated, working on my fourth board, And I never knew about plant medicine. I didn't think the words psychedelic and medicine belonged in the same paragraph, let alone paired together. And in one treatment, it brought me peace, got me off all my medications. My neuropathy in my left leg from the first Gulf War is gone. My tremor is gone. And I had a new perspective and scope on life. So I went back after that 10 days, sat in a board meeting for 45 minutes, looked at the miserable people staring at their computers, and got up, nodded my head, and I walked out and never went back. And that's when I walked away from it all. Walked away from a marriage that wasn't going well. Because once one person finds healing, they start to see a lot of things that maybe they don't want to do anymore. I walked away from my job, my career, walked away from my country. I moved to Mexico. And from there, everything else came out. The movie studio, the resort system for special needs families, the Healing Heroes movie, the new app for veterans I've got coming. I don't know how it's happening, Eli. I really don't, man. All I can tell you is I'm in the right place at the right time, and I'm taking the skill sets I had from the past and applying them to the present.
So the Ibegan Experience was after you sold your company?
It was. So I sold in June of 22. I stayed on for a year in all that misery. Not getting out of bed on the weekends, isolation, just a shell of myself. And then finally in April of 23, believe it or not, I had to learn about this from my tattoo artist. Yes, I'm not very typical. I get that.
So the tattoos were before?
The tattoos were before Ibegan.
Got it.
It was a project I started, an art piece of art that covers 40% of my body. Everybody's like, why? I'm like, because I want to. Because I am abnormal and I'm cool with that. I'm abnormal in a good way. But anyway, so it was my tattoo guy that started talking to me about it. I'm like, oh, man. But it started piquing my interest, and I started reading. I started digging. I started looking at the lack of research in the U.S., but some NIH data. I started looking at overseas data. I'm like, if this was any good, it'd be here, right? We're U.S. medicine. I owned imaging centers. I owned pharmacy. I owned physical rehab centers. I mean, I had it all. I would have definitely had that if there was anything to it. But we never knew about it. I was never taught about it. I was never even shown that it could be an option in my 26 years leading in that industry.
So bring us into where you were, who you were at that time, pre-Ibegan, when you're talking to your tattoo artist. If you were sitting here, what would we have noticed or seen?
You would have seen somebody that was a lot less relaxed. You would have seen somebody that looked like they were swimming with two anchors around their neck upstream every day, forcing issues, making it happen. His will is his way, and a control freak. But you would have seen somebody that loved his people. I had 500 family members in that company. And every Tuesday I had town halls. Build your people, build your business. So in no sense do I want to say older versions of us should be thrown away. But when you go through a healing process, you should pick out the pieces of you that were effective and good, carry them forward, and the ones that were defective or old, you replace them, refine them, and you grow yourself. And so that's what I did over about a year period of time. So my old me, probably wouldn't have been sitting here. My old me probably would have been, no, I'm on my mission. I've got to force this to happen. The new me, I came out of that experience. So it was August of 23. Between April and August of 23, I was on the list to go into the treatment center. And I prepared myself. You know, same thing that drove me to be triple, almost quadruple boarded, drove me to learn everything I could about this. I consulted people. I reached out. And I learned so much about my experience before I went into it. I went in with so many tools. So think about it this way. A lot of people with traumas, Levine divine trauma is something that comes at you too fast, too soon, or too much.
Peter Levine.
Oh, what's that? Yeah.
Peter.
And so the too soon meaning too soon in life that you don't have the tools to process it properly, so we tend to wall it off. I use the analogy of it's like cleaning the bedroom real quick because company's coming over and everything goes in the closet. right? And you go into an experience like this, you got to open the closet up. You got to sweep everything out from under the carpet that you put in there for a number of years. But what good does that do if you still don't have the tools and the process and the organization to clean it up and process it properly? And I see a lot of people go into psychedelic medicine and their 2 visits beforehand don't give them the tools they need. Hopefully they gained it in life somewhere, but otherwise you're just gonna pull everything out and people are gonna shove it right back in the closet again if they don't have the tools to really deal with it.
Go back to those 3: too soon, too fast, and too.
Yep. So Levine defines it. And I have an addendum to Levine's, if you don't mind, I'll give you. So
Yeah.
Levine's definition is something that a trauma is something that comes at you that is too much, too soon, too fast, meaning basically it's coming at you in a way that you cannot process it. Imagine getting 1,000 terabytes of data thrown at a Commodore 64 computer. It just ain't happening, guys. The word terabyte, I don't think was even much invented back then, right? But now, through life, you upgrade your processor, and the whole thought process is come back later in life, reopen that, reprocess these things in a different way. So, I have an addendum to the whole concept on trauma, and to addend to the great definition by Levine is. It's something from your past that has been tied to a negative emotion, probably improperly, and it is sucking up bandwidth of your present, robbing you of your future. Now, think about that. We have so many veterans and so many regular in the U.S. I step out on the ledge and say easily, there are 3 to 4 million veterans with PTSD in America right now, easily. I think that number could be double that.
As a percentage of people who go to war, what do you think it is?
So depending on the study you look at, again, take the study for the weight that they're worth. Since 2001, some of the estimates are as high as 12, even 15% of veterans with PTSD. It's much higher. Look, I practiced civilian medicine for a number of years. I look at the history. I would see military. I would see a 38-year-old gentleman coming in for depression and insomnia. I knew to ask the questions. None of my partners, none of my doctors had any kind of target towards it. Depression, right for an SSRI. See them back in 2 weeks, see them back in 6 months. Recommend maybe they get some counseling. There's so much mislabeled PTSD. And I want to get rid of the D, the disorder part of this, right? Because people get so locked into having to meet the criteria for the DSM-5 and everything. I want to pause for a second and say, I would argue that anything we deal with mental health in this country, anxiety, depression, insomnia, even in most cases, I asked my doctor friends who called me crazy. I hate that word, but called me crazy for walking away and doing what I did to my brain. I healed it. But now they see me almost 2 years later going, damn. Now I challenge them back and I say this. Tell me the primary break or disorder in the chemical system in the body that causes depression. Tell me what ages and wears out in the body that causes anxiety. Insomnia. No, it's not that. It's usually something, stressors in life. Death of a loved one, divorce, stress. I went, trauma. It's the same thing, guys. So the reason I go back and I argue that the numbers are much higher in veterans and in the U.S. is that just because it doesn't meet the criteria for D, the disorder, trauma's everywhere throughout our country. And we've all experienced as part of our growth. But I believe the number that truly have the definition of that disorder are probably maybe almost double what I even think my own estimates are, because we're not reporting it properly and we just don't like to talk about it. And the doctor has us on a little SSRI or an SNRI or a combination drug or something else. and it's helping us hold it together. Just got to tell you, there's better than just holding it together, right? I'm kind of rambling there a little bit, but I'm going to circle back around to what you asked about. My purpose. When I came out the other side of my healing, and I saw just how freaking profound it was for me to spend 10 days. Now, it's been months before it. And I don't know what your other guests have said, but I always say medicine's maybe 20% of the journey in healing. You've got to do the work before, work after. I did a lot of work before, and I didn't have to do much after because I did so much work before. I almost real-time integrated through my experience. It was phenomenal. I found out that a lot of my traumas had nothing to do with combat. They had to do with time as a trauma surgeon. They had time to do with when you're at war, you've got one person versus another. Hey, you signed up, I signed up. It's you or me. Bye. I'd rather it be you. But when you're taking care of a family of 5 hit by a drunk driver at 3 o'clock in the morning that was traveling through the state, and the only one that survives is a 6-year-old, and she's a paraplegic and going to be on a vent for the rest of her life with no family to take care of her. That's the ones that get you. So
did you know that before the Ibegan treatment?
No.
If I'd have asked you about, would you have remembered it? Would it have been a pivotal moment in your life?
Sure, I remember, because I remember the anger I had towards that truck driver. I got a funny story behind him, but we can save that for another time. I remember just thinking we had something in trauma we call the T to T ratio. The less teeth and more tattoos you got, you can live through anything. You're like a cockroach. It's the sweet little preacher's wife that would back out of her driveway at 15 miles an hour and get rear-ended and break her neck and die. It was just so much unfairness in what people and how and what happened to them. This truck driver walked away. That one particular, which he didn't walk away. He walked away in handcuffs. He had a large wound on his head that I had to close up, and then they put him in handcuffs and took him off. But 4 of those family members died that night, except for
You had to work on all of them, the truck driver and.
Yeah, I was a chief resident at that time, and so we had teams going around through the trauma bays, and yeah, I had to work on him. He spit on me. Yeah, he was handcuffed to the bed. When I went to suture the wound in his head, because my attending was like, "That guy's going to jail tonight. I don't care what it takes. You close that wound and you get his ass to jail." So he needs a skin graft. It's like, he doesn't need a skin graft. And so I took this sizable missing piece of skin on his head and I closed it up with what's called a purse string suture and did a lot of work. And when I was done, I don't think his left eye closed, but he went to jail. And 6 weeks later, that little girl died of sepsis. And I felt relieved. Could you imagine what it was like for her? Trying to process where her parents and her brothers were. Trying to understand why she can't move her arms and her legs anymore. So I didn't realize how much that affected me. So what I tell everybody out there is our first responders are people that work that every day. Watch out for yourselves. This stuff can add up for you too. First responders especially. Our police department, our fire department, they're on the front lines every day. We get deployments. That's their life. So I'm a big supporter of them looking at healing as well. I would like to say one thing though. A lot of people have asked me, do you need the plant medicine to heal? My answer is no. Some people do. I did. Saved my life. But there's also steps of healing. And I don't know about your personal journey. I'd love to hear it. But for me, it was finding gratitude. It was finding connection. It was redefining who I am and knowing who I am, my own core values, priorities. It's about loving myself. That's a tough one, man. I'll tell you a cool exercise for that in a second too. That'll make you giggle. And then duplicating that for the veterans that we put on the movie for Healing Heroes.
that experience, I want to go back to that experience because sometimes in the details we can find a lot of gifts. So that experience with the truck driver and the whole family and the young girl, that all came up during the Ibegan treatment?
It did.
And how did you understand it through that experience?
So as I'm watching it, I felt guilt for being happy when she died. I thought I knew what my traumas were, and I thought that would be one of them. I thought that the way my mother passed, I thought that would be another one. I thought that a life that I took, that would be another one that I'd taken combat. No. I had a guide. I know everybody does have a guide in their experience. I did, in both of mine.
You had a what?
Guide. I had a guide up in here, right?
Okay.
Guided me through. And
Through the
everybody
journey.
has
Okay.
that in my journey, right? And same person both times, or same entity, whatever. And I remember I said, all right, let's go through these. Boom, like a 4K movie reel. And I want to stress to people, not everybody has the same experience or the reality of it or the third person experience I did. Don't expect that. But I went through those things and literally I was like, you've already dealt with this stuff. Now, would you like to move on to what it really was? So that event I thought was a bigger trauma than it was, but I already learned my lesson from it. And my final lesson was, don't be so caught up in your own personal feelings because you were relieved that a little girl passed away. That was her life experience. That was something she came into this life for, per se, and that's what the plan was. No, my real traumas were interesting. They wouldn't necessarily be things you'd even label as bad, good, except that I didn't pick the lesson up I was supposed to. I'll give you two of them. One, a lot of trauma seeds in childhood, and I know your story, and that's one of those things that a lot of PTSD has a seed in childhood, right? Mine was a near drowning experience when I was about 3.5, almost 4, at a resort here in the Panhandle of Florida. Before Destin blew up and got big, that's what my family could afford, and I made it out of the room one day while my parents were napping. Made it to the pool, no one there, jumped in, sank like a brick, and nearly drowned. Until the point where I remembered my dad 2 days a week had taken me to the YMCA for swim lessons all summer long. Like, I got this. Dog paddled to the top, took a breath, made it to the side.
You're saying after this experience?
This was when I was younger. So in the experience.
So after the near drowning experience, he took you to...
No, this was the near drowning experience.
Oh, okay.
So I nearly drowned in that experience, right? And so I was 3.5, 4 years old. And so that all happened. And as I was blacking out, I remembered, you can swim, dummy. And I remember I surfaced, dog paddled to the side. My dad's foot was right there. And I've taught this many times in my leadership classes, what my dad did, what my dad said. And I went, I was drowning. You were right here, like, why didn't you jump in and save me? He just kind of, I knew you could swim. I needed you to know you could swim. And that was what I thought the lesson was from it, but it wasn't. I relived it during my experience. Instead, I went backwards. I went from the moment I moved the chair up to the door, undid the chain, and I walked through the doorway. My dad was on me right away. I'm watching myself in that experience walk out of the room, and I'm watching him not even more than 20 paces behind me, just looking around the corner, letting it happen. Now, you can think yourself as a parent, go, who would let that happen? Me, my control freak self at the time, I would have just said, get your butt back in bed. Come on now, get in here. But that man was courageous enough to let it happen, but still offer me protection and safety and let me make my mistake. Because if he didn't let me make that one in a controlled setting, what would the outcome be if he wasn't there, right? Can you imagine the courage it took him as a father? You're a father. You got young kids now. Could you imagine letting them get that far and letting that happen?
Probably not.
But that's what I learned during my experience. I saw it from his perspective, not mine. And it changed how I parent. Pretty cool. Not a lot. I got a 20-year-old special needs son, right? I got to be on him pretty frequent. But letting people make their failures sometimes.
So I want to piece this apart a little bit. The Ibegan showed you that that was a trauma from your perspective, and it healed that trauma.
Right.
So what was the effect of that trauma, if you understand it, from when it happened until the Ibegan treatment? How did it change your life in a more negative way?
The culmination of the trauma has made me a control freak, right? Because the human brain is constantly looking at the past, looking for patterns. And in those patterns, it's trying to establish if this could be an outcome.
Right.
We're trying to have predictability for the future. But we're spending all of our time in the present, looking at the past, trying to predict something that may or may not happen in the future. We're not living in the present, right? So for me, I processed everything. I calculated everything to the nth degree of here's my probability, here's my risk, here's what I'm going to do, here's the fail safes I'm going to put in. I would play 9 moves ahead and have everything planned out for a failure in any of those if it happened. Can you imagine how much bandwidth that takes up? So for me, I was a control freak. Nope, you're not doing that because I'm not going to take the risk. I don't have the bandwidth. And afterwards, it allowed me to let go. That event of the near drowning and seeing it from my father's perspective, it allowed me to be a better dad and a better leader. It allowed me to go, I'm going to trust you on this. You're not going to know it, but I'm going to be following you 20 paces behind you and watching you really close. And I'm going to be there just in case I got to pick you up for that mistake. But I got to let you make some. It's a tough one, man.
Can you give an example for now?
Yeah. I got a lot of them where that had to intervene. And let me say this.
What I meant by that, an example,
Yeah.
post the Ibegan experience,
Right.
where you're living in this way, learning the lesson, taking the lesson of your dad.
So recently, I've got 3 startup projects all at the same time, funding all at the same time, hitting all at the same time. One is crazy enough with everything else we have going on, but all 3 hit at once. And I needed some downtime. I'm going through a divorce after 30 years because you finally just realize there's some things you can't fix, right? You can't fix other people. And so with all that bandwidth, I needed some downtime. And I went to my team. I said, guys, I know you're all in the middle of pitch decks right now. I know you're all in the middle of the getting the master decks done and finishing the financials. I need 5 days. Like, sure, man. Go for it. And normally I would have called in every single day. I didn't. Came back and they did an amazing job. They took my controlling nature in the past as he doesn't trust us. And it wasn't that. I just couldn't live with the risk of not putting 110%, which is no such thing in myself, into something and it failing. So that was one example. Another example is with my kids. I have an 18-year-old son. He's about to be 18. He's my youngest. Going through what 18-year-old boys do, right? I've had several instances where, I had one with my son. I had a McLaren that was garaged, and he every day, can I drive it? Can I drive it? No. And I was in Cancun living down there, and one day I see the GPS he didn't know I had in there moving, right? I let it happen. It's 8 in the morning. Thinking he's going to go to a girl's house. Because normally I would have called him, right, get your butt back in that garage. That's an expense. I let it happen, just like my dad did. And kept watching, like, interesting. He went to a little town center, went to a little restaurant. Like, he must have a girl with him or something, like, or a friend, right? It's a 2-seater. Stayed there for about 30 minutes. Then he drove to this car dealership. That's why, all right, I got to call it here. He's about to trade my car in on me. And I said, hey, buddy. He goes, hey, Dad. So how do you think this call is going to go? He goes, not good for me. I just started laughing. And I said, no, sir, probably not good for you. I said, so before we get anywhere, tell me why every day that I've said no for the last 2 years I've had that car, today you didn't ask and you just did it. He goes, I'll give you a reason, but it's not an excuse. Damn, that's words out of my mouth, right? Like he listens. And I said, all right. He goes, I have learned everything about that car. I know its torque, its HRPM. I know its hydraulic system. I have studied everything about it. I know it's 0 to every stat you could think of. He had studied about that car. The engineering behind it was the world's first hybrid supercar, right? So it had the electric motor fast off the line, engine kicking in. I mean, he had it down. I said, right? He goes, I'm at a car show. Like, who are you with? He goes, nobody. I came by myself. I said, you didn't go pick anybody up, go show it off. He goes, no, I'm here because I know this car and I love talking to people about their cars. It's this massive car show I'm put in, and I knew you couldn't be here this weekend because you had to film. So in that moment of not stopping him when he left, of giving him that 20 feet ahead on his way to the pool like I was, it really earned a lot of respect from me to him. Yeah, I wasn't happy that he still did it without permission, but I was happy that he followed a passion. He followed something that he loved, and that he did it responsibly. He drove around the neighborhood 3 times to get used to the hydraulic brakes and the hydraulic steering because he knew it wasn't electronic and it would feel different. It's hard to get mad at, Eli. So that's an example, both professional and personal.
That's cool. I like it. I was wondering, as you were speaking about another definition of trauma, that it's an experience that we haven't pulled the lesson from yet.
Yes. That is there, man, just that vibrates truth, right? It's just, we haven't pulled the lesson from it. I got a great story, I'll tell you. And this one I just told on film for the movie. And I said I wasn't going to ever tell this story. But I'll tell you the higher level of it's not taking too much time. I was back at that major hospital working in their trauma bay. I got a call, life flight coming in. One was code black, one was code red, which means already gone. The other one's a trauma. And so got down, I pronounced the code. I pronounced this probably 60, 70-year-old gentleman gone, gunshot wound to the head, way too much gray matter gone to even try to save. And then I move on to the second, which was another gunshot wound to the head victim, like both close range, but no exit wound. And female, 30s, 40s. Here's the short story of it all. It was a murder-suicide. That was the father and the daughter. The daughter was alive and able to speak and would not consent to surgery. And she was bleeding into her brain. I mean, it's just moments till she herniated and lights out.
And who was she? She was the
daughter of the man who I'd pronounced dead.
Right, but I'm saying who pulled the trigger?
Good question. I assumed it was her because she would not consent for surgery. I'm like, look, whatever happened tonight, let's just get through this. We can save this. I've got neurosurgery en route, blah, blah, blah. No. Why not? And basically what she told me, very muddled speech because she was stroking all at the same time, was that she wasn't sure if she'd be able to talk or even live through the surgery. And she's got to know she made the right decision. I said, don't worry. She goes, would you just hear my story? Her story was that man was her father. He was a man who was very respected in the community and had been raping her since she was 7.
Wow.
And she never told anybody. But he had done so much good for the community. And she was basically a church secretary where he was the preacher. She watched him every day, and it continued for years and years. And like an elephant tied at the stake as a young elephant, bigger, you can just pull that stake out and make it go away. But she felt like she was the antidote to his demon, the words that she said. Because when he would come in there to her room, to her office, wherever it would happen, he had a different look in his eyes. He held himself different. He spoke differently. They called it his demon.
He called it his demon.
He did. They both did. Because afterwards, he would weep, cry, want to turn himself in and just say, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't have any control when that happens. I die. When he came in that day to her office, he's the one that pulled the gun out. He said, no more. He shot her first, then he shot himself. Unfortunately, it wasn't effective on her. She told me the story, and she said, if I don't make it through the other side, I never told my mother, and now I'm married with 2 boys. I need to know if I made the right decision. So she gave that to me.
The right decision
to not tell him all these years. She was late 30s. This is going on since she was 7.
Oh.
I said, okay, just consent to surgery. She did. She died 5 minutes later. Went to the waiting room. Full 5 o'clock in the morning of people from their church. Praying, loving, crying. I heard so many stories, like 2 burned into my brain. Oh my God, he made my house payments when I was out of work for 6 months so my kids wouldn't be homeless. The other one was he helped cure John's alcoholism, or we wouldn't have made it. And I thought to myself, I don't know if what she said was true. She had a bullet in her head, for God's sakes. I'm not a police officer. I'm a doctor. And I was not able to save her life. That's the story. Because I thought to myself, even if it was true, the 2 people it affected most on the face of this planet are now gone. And if it's not true, whatever, why ruin all that and tarnish all the good that he did do? We tend to label people as good, bad, and not understanding there's some good people that have some bad traits and bad people that have some good traits, right? And whatever it was, I didn't say anything. So I really thought that's why I was being shown that.
So this experience came up in the Ibegan?
It did. 4 times.
Wow.
4 times, like it looped.
Yes.
It looped. Each time I'm like, shit, I should have told the mom. Looped again. Shit, I should have told the husband. By the 4th loop, I'm guessing, like, should I have tried to put a bolt in her head in the ER and drained the pressure there? Should I have tried to save the father? Should I have just not gone to the ER at all that day? I mean, I was guessing, and I was really stressing out because everything else, Eli, I was real-time integrating. I mean, I was like, I got it. Whew, that was cool. Yes. And I woke up from that experience still not knowing what that was all about. So there was a provider where I went that picked up on that and said, you need to go back in. I thought Ibegan was once and done now. Come on now. And there are people that go back in. But I went back in 3 days later. I'm like, why? I didn't have a great day. I had a great day. I was feeling awesome. And the way it was said to me was that last little nugget of whatever's there could be very important. And if you don't clean it up, that radioactive material could leak through and eventually repollute everything again. Like, screw that. I came way too far for this. So I went back in, lighter dose. Verbally had somebody in my ear talking me through it.
Again, a guide.
Yep. And well, external guide and internal guide. So external guide talking to me. What do you see? Trying to help me maybe figure out why I was in the loop, right? Not very traditional to do that in Ibegan. You typically let them go deep, go in. Lighter dose of Ibegan with a therapist talking to me, guiding me through the experience.
Fascinating.
What do you see in the room? What do you see around you? Helping me go back in to figure it out.
Specifically to process this one experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I remember I went in, and the way they got me in was really cool. They brought my mom into the experience, and just amazing. And I remember I got off this little conveyor belt. So I would go through like this wormhole, and I get off this conveyor belt, and I get to the end of it after high-fiving all these hands going. It was the same entry. It was just like, okay, this is whatever I built in my brain to get comfortable at getting to the state of mind I need to be in. And there's my guide. My guide. Like, he goes, I said, I guess you know why I'm back?
Fifth time.
There it is. Go through it again. Just what do you see in the room? What's brighter? What's drawing your attention? I'm watching my skinny, bald self sit there, write notes. I can almost read them over my shoulder. It's so crystal clear. Did it again. I'm starting to get frustrated. That's not a good place to get to when you're in that state, right? She goes, relax into it. Relaxed into it. Ask your guide to show you a different way. I'm guessing you can't hear her. Can you show me a different way? And it goes right to the point where she consented for surgery after she told me her story. Normally the story goes forward and I'm sitting there doing notes. She codes, she dies. I tell the family. 5 minutes later. In that 5 minutes, though, I missed something really, really, really important. And my guide looks at me and goes, don't look, listen. Instead of looking around the room, I just paused. And I didn't fast forward. In that 5 minute gap of this playing almost like it's real time, like I'm there, I heard her last 3 words. And Eli, when I heard them, I knew it was truth. I was like, yes, I remember that now. I thought it was just muddled sound. What's she saying? I forgive him. In that moment, that's when I was supposed to learn forgiveness. That true level of forgiveness, of letting it go. And that ability for her to do that in her final moments was my lesson to me that I needed to let my traumas go. They weren't holding on to me. I was holding on to them. And hundreds of stories start rushing to me because it was like a linchpin moment. Oh my God, these are all the people I've never forgiven. I just cut them off of my life. I burnt those bridges, right? And I'm like, damn. And then it was me in the mirror. I never forgave myself. I just melted. I fell back in the bed. I thought they had pulled a blanket out of the warmer because it was a cold hospital room with all the monitoring I had to have. And there was no warm blanket. That was peace. It's legendary.
Love it. Love it. When you were talking, it brought me back to an experience I had. I was in addiction recovery rooms for a long time.
Okay.
You mentioned kind of the pre-work before medicine.
Right.
This was I was in recovery for sex addiction, and I would go 4 or 5 times a week for years,
Mm-hmm.
probably 7, 8 years. And in one of those meetings, it was a guy in his 50s or 60s, still had a tough life, was sober, had been coming around the rooms for a while. I remember sharing this story, and he said, he spoke about being raped by his father and how that led to a lot of his challenges now. And recently his father had passed. And he said those same words. He said, I forgive him. And I believed him. Like when he said it, I believed him.
Knew it. You knew the truth in it, right?
I knew the truth. And I was like, that's crazy. And it changed me.
Yeah.
It changed me.
It does. Forgiveness is a major step of healing. I was right. Washington Post did a thing on me, and I got answered another one last night. It asked me, support and life lesson you would give today. I said, remove blame from your vocabulary. Think about that one for a second. If you made $1 billion, once you got there, are you going to look back and you're going to blame people for helping you make $1 billion? No, you're going to attribute. They helped you, you're going to attribute. But why tie past events as positive and a negative? They're past. Because everything that happened to us got us right here, right now, exactly where we're supposed to be. What we label as good, what we label as bad. Untie those negative emotions and replace grain with attribution and gratitude. That is hard, especially when you've dealt with childhood abuse. But when you're finally able to look back and go, I forgive and have gratitude for who I am now, which means I have to have gratitude for everything in my past and everything that affected who I am. I challenge people all the time. I saw this. I don't know if it's Jordan Peterson or not, and so please forgive me if I'm not quoting you correctly, but talked about your soul that comes into this world and you're born. We can put you over in this nice little quiet corner. We can feed you. We can keep you safe. You'll never come in harm's way. But you can never leave this room. But you'll live your whole life here perfectly safe. Who the heck would take that?
Right.
And so then you
The bubble
flip
boy.
that. Right. You flip that. And you think to yourself, the hardest times in our life have probably delivered us the greatest experience and value going forward. That once we get the lesson from the trauma and we let go of it, thank you for the lesson. Move on. Take your tool set. Go build the world better.
What do you make of the fact that even through the Ibegan, you had to loop through it so many times and go back a second time?
So luckily it was all during my visit. I believe if I wouldn't have gone back in, I would have probably fallen into old ruts when I got back. But going back and having that linchpin moment 3 days later, while I was still there in the zone, much lower dose, very skilled personnel administering, very well-trained personnel guiding. That was so profound for me. It changed my life. It gave me that linchpin I needed to move on to my new purpose.
What did you have to forgive yourself for when you were looking at yourself in the mirror?
Eli, think about your self-medication over the years, your ways that you dealt with your childhood step was probably going through everything that led you into the past that you did. One way or another had an effect. For me, it was alcohol. It was drugs at one point. It was a lot of self-medication, some prescriptions. I mean, hell, I was on hydrocodone for my neuropathy for years because the other meds didn't work.
Hydrocodone is a pain medication.
It is. And Ibegan's perfect for that. And in one instance, everything gone, no withdrawals, no cravings, trauma healed. Like, why do we not have this in America? What in the world is going on? And there's a double-edged sword to that I want to make sure we talk about because there's definitely harms that can come. But I, in that moment of looking in the mirror, had to forgive myself for everything I did to myself. When you tell a rape victim they need to forgive themselves, they look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? But in their healing, that's why I guide them through. You need to forgive yourself. What? As a trauma ER doc, only 1 in 3 rapes that would present to the ER would even report before reporting laws changed. Women would find some self-blame. Well, maybe I'll let him on. Maybe or I don't want to make him. I don't want him to lose his job. I don't want him to be able to not come into the country. Whatever the case is. Excuses, excuses, excuses. That's the first thing they got to forgive for if that happened. Second thing is, what have they done to self-medicate since then that's taken them off their path? Maybe the drinking that made them not so much of the best single mom they could have been. Maybe it was repetitive relationships with bad boyfriends they exposed their kids to. I don't know. But they have to find forgiveness in that moment for themselves. So in that moment, me looking in that mirror, that's when it hit me. I was like, shit. I never forgave myself. Peace.
Is all of the forgiveness for others, in your opinion, just in order to get to forgiveness of self?
I think that because we're taught blame rather than attribution, that it's very easy, especially for people with a low EQ, a low intelligence, quotient, but mostly a low emotional and quotient, emotional intelligence, to blame others for everything. Maybe that is. But if you change your perspective on your life and you said, I'm going into this experience and I want to come out of it with all kinds of knowledge, would you sit in that dark room and let that guy feed you and take care of you your whole life and never have anything? Or is there propensity that you're such a badass, you're going to put it on war mode and go, let's go, right? It's really kind of twisted and sick to think of it that way. Well, why would I choose to have that happen to me in my life experience? That's a very profound question if you haven't learned what the experience was supposed to deliver to you. I struggled through my career watching bad things happen to kids, cancers, everything else. Like, what message can God have for a 6-year-old to get leukemia and die? Sorry, ma'am, I don't have an answer for that. But there is one. And I got this phrase from life, from God, and it's called, I'm sorry, you're welcome. When my son was born, I have a 20-year-old special needs son. He's my first boy. Little Charlie. Charles has been the firstborn son for generations. Didn't come from a lot of wealth, didn't come from any wealth. But that was tradition. He was born with a genetic disorder that my wife was a carrier for. And it devastated her. Broke the family line, broke the lineage, broke the tradition. I didn't care about any of that. But I did think to myself, kids don't come with instruction manuals anyway. Now I got this son that we don't even know if he's going to live past 13. There's only been 7 cases even reported close to his. He didn't walk till he was 8. I mean, just magnificent things. But you feel sorry for yourself at first because you're like, who am I going to play ball with? Who am I going to sit there and teach how to pick up on girls? Not that I was ever very good at it. But who am I going to pass all this knowledge off to that my parents gave to me? And after my healing, I sat there on the couch in my new office, the couch, and watched Elf for the 5th time with him one day. And that's when it hit me. He's here to teach me more about life than I'm ever going to be able to teach him. He's brought miracles into my life. He's brought humanity. He's brought true love in. He is just awesome. And plus, I get to dress him whenever I want. It's great. At 20 years old, he's like my giant Ken doll. I love it. But at that point, that's when I came up with the name for the resort system for special needs families. Because special needs families a lot of times don't feel comfortable going someplace because they're not understood. So the name of it is St. Charlie Resorts, where special is normal. I'm sorry. You're welcome. That's life. That's the message. And if we can get more people with trauma to understand the I'm sorry to the you're welcome part, we'll have a lot more healing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it's bringing up for me is I mentioned that I started going around the rooms of recovery. And as I was there, I said, this is amazing. I'm so glad I have an addiction. This is great. I learned all these lessons.
Right.
The people that when I first walked in the rooms, I'm like, wow, these guys are weird. I started becoming my best friends.
Yeah.
I'm sharing with them. I'm hanging out with them. I'm, if I want to go to anyone, I remember one time we all went, a group of us went for pizza. And one of them was in a good mood. And he said to the waiter, he said, you can ask us any question. I said, how do you guys know each other? Right? How do you guys, which is in that circle that wasn't shared. We don't share that we're in recovery from addiction.
Right.
We're anonymous. We don't share that. So it felt like kind of like any question until that question came about. And the one side of that was, yes, this is awesome. I'm part of this brotherhood. I'm part of this friendship. And it felt true and real and authentic. And on the other hand, there was this voice inside me and within them also of why me? Why did I get this? And for me, it was phrased, why did I have this specific addiction? I'm getting so much from the fact that I have an addiction, but why is sex addiction? And I used to joke that I got the best and worst of addiction. I got work addiction and sex addiction.
Right.
The work addiction, you're held up, on a pedestal. oh, look how successful this guy is,
Right.
And the sex addiction. Even if it's not successful, it's like, oh, he's so productive, he's doing so much.
Right.
It's great. Everyone's excited about someone who's doing that. And the sex addiction is, often seen as seedy and disgusting and
Right.
underground, etc. So that was sitting there and bugging me, the sex addiction, until it happened to be a little before COVID, as things were, the world was changing a lot. About 7 or 8 months before COVID, I released this TED Talk called Escaping Porn Addiction.
Right. I saw
And
that.
I put my story out there. As COVID hit, these meetings that I thought would never end and would be my lifeline shut down. And we had a few of us meeting outdoors, but slowly it became just 2, 3 of us meeting on Lincoln Road, if you know where that is, in Miami Beach, outside, standing 10 feet away, having a meeting. I'm like, this is, this is awful. But this voice in my head was saying, we have a lot to offer. I was getting a lot from the people in these rooms, and we're seen as something that no one should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
No one should say. No one should announce this to the public. I had noticed in other meetings, people spoke about it. Oh, I'm sober from alcohol for 20 years. And I remember thinking, it's obviously before the TED Talk. Like, imagine saying I'm sober from porn for 5, 6 years. People would think I'm crazy.
Right. But addiction is addiction, and people replace them with other ones.
100% when you know it, when you understand it.
Right.
But if there's that outside shame projected, it can become a lot to carry.
Absolutely.
As I saw what was going on with COVID and a lot of people being broken in different ways, I remember in my business, I said, we're cool. Like, we'll just figure out, we just have to weather the storm somehow. I don't know what's going to happen. It turned out COVID turned out to be very good for many businesses, obviously destructive for many as well. But as a whole, the world made a lot more money in the short term.
Right.
And many businesses made a lot more money in the short term. But I remember sitting there in some of those meetings and wondering why I was a little more calm than others, and talking to other business owners. And I said, it's the addiction from recovery. I've already had the rug ripped out from under me, and I've seen how to find my footing on quicksand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led to speaking out. So when you're talking about this as the special needs, I'm sure for you it means a lot more, but the way I'm hearing it from my own experience is these things that carried so much shame, eventually I said, I'm going to carry it with pride, and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think my understanding is that there's probably a lot more sex addicts than anything else.
Sure.
And the ones who go on and do the healing should do some talking.
Yeah, they should, and they shouldn't have the shame behind it. I'll tell you, so in what was originally going to be a TV series, after I went through my healing, I came back and I was so upset that Western medicine was not being offered this opportunity. And why did more doctors not know about this? What I have to learn about it from my tattoo guy, who I loved like a brother until I lost him. Why? And when you finally realize that this is available and legal in so many other countries, it's very easy, you don't control yourself, to get angry that the same people that have served this country are having to leave this country for healing on money they don't have. Mission Within and Heroic Hearts, hats off to you guys, two amazing organizations. They have a backlog of so many people that can't afford it because it's relying on philanthropy and donations to put them through, or them to afford it themselves, and the travel, everything else. It's just like, at that point in my career, when I walked away from it all, said, well, I'm not going to open a clinic. There's enough of them that are out there. Lawmakers are having trouble getting this passed. What's missing? MDMA just tried to come through the front door again.
Oh, I know.
Denied when it might have its best opportunity. Again, why you keep on coming back at the same solution if it's not working for decades trying to get through that door? I'm the guy that likes to go around the back of the house, open the window, climb inside, and unlock the door for everybody else. That's what entrepreneurship is, right? You find those solutions, you find little catalysts that have nice little butterfly effects on steroids of other effects. And that's why I wanted to tell the story of not just mine, I mean, I could tell my story like I did on your show today. I don't mind doing that a million times. How much more powerful would it be for me to go find 6 veterans, originally 2, but then it grew to 6, and shoot and record and basically record everything. U.S. Tour number 1 began 1 year ago next week, where I went on U.S. Tour 1 to these 6 families' inner circles. These 6, we had 5 veterans and 1 first responder, and one of the veterans was also on Fire Department New York. And so we had a good gamut, and God picked out this lineup because they were just perfect for each other. And so went around to all their families there in a circle, and I got to know kind of what you asked me. Who was this person early in life? What were they like before they left? What came home? And what are you not talking about now? Because conversations aren't happening. People are like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want them to know I'm broken. They're thinking he's already been through enough. I don't want to bring it up. Poor guy, gal. Those lack of conversations were consistent amongst all 6 families, all 6 inner circles. And then to take the 6 of them down to Mexico to a center that we did just for the movie, which is now a movie. We've heard it from episodes to movie because now we're going to have a theatrical release in November. Super excited. I'll tell you about that in a second. But in 10 days, Eli, you could add up all of the moments in my 26 years of medicine, triple board, just all that stuff, right? Of the number of lives I saved and the impact I had, and nothing but 26 years would have come close to the 10 days I spent with those 6 individuals.
Unbelievable.
And the healing I saw and the transformation I saw. Now, we had constructed a program specifically for veterans to really get in there and address veteran issues, give them the tools, teach them the tools before they go into medicine, and then help them use those tools afterwards.
So your idea was, let me take 6 people through it and share the story with the world.
Let me put my money where my mouth is, because my money was not making me happy. I was miserable before going through healing. So I said, I don't need to go pitch this. I don't need a pilot. We're going to shoot it all, guys. Best analogy I can give you, it's like going up to the Northwest and putting out some cameras to see if you can capture Bigfoot, and holy goodness, all 6 cameras got Bigfoot, right? And you're like, we got to get back in here. And so we spent the last year following up those 6. One of them, Courtney, lost her father, who was her hero. But she said, I would have never been able to stand up and lead my family through this if I wouldn't have healed. Ryan lost his job. I mean, everything just happens, and I see them, the resilience. And we've been following for the last year. And so my thought was, how much more impactful are the stories in a predictive format of like, I'll show you. I'm not going to tell you my story. Eli's not going to tell you his. We're going to get 6 individuals. We're going to put them through a program. Watch this, America. But we have to be careful with the stigma behind psychedelic medicine, which we try to get around by saying plant medicine, right? Rebranding that term is not going to be easy, especially in the mindsets of a lot of Americans that associate with counterculture back from the 60s and 70s with LSD and everything. I felt the best way to do that was to get the minds through hearts. There's a lot of empathy and sympathy around the veteran space and what we've been through in the last couple of decades. Tell their stories, but at the same time, half their stories didn't come from combat. PTSD is not a diagnosis of special forces. It's not a diagnosis of warfare or the military. It's life.
Yes.
And help people understand that when they look and go, oh my God, her story is rape. It's my story. Maybe I should pay attention. And by no sense are we saying psychedelics are the answer for you, but watch the stages of healing we put them through. It was so amazing when we came out the other side. I doubled the budget. I sunk even more into it. I said, I don't care if this lives on YouTube. we're putting the best production together for Healing Heroes No Mind Left Behind. And what's come out of it brings tears to my eyes still. It's going to be impactful. More to come. So, a lot of stories about...
Do you know where it's going to be released yet?
So, we're in negotiations under NDA. I can't go into full detail, but I can tell you the strategy. I'm pushing for a theatrical release in theaters that then will go to streaming. And then from streaming, it'll have a spinoff into a series and also a second series that we're bringing to market about veterans as well, which is really cool. I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about that one. Or you're coming down to Cancun. We'll do a show there, man. Okay. That's where my place is, my studio is. So
Nice.
Anyway, that's my strategy, is to bring it to market with stuff that people will see a value in and say, we want that movie even more because it comes with all these fringe benefits right behind it. At some point, I'll tell you about the app. On the verge of really being able to release it. Really cool project. I'll just tell you this, man. I don't know how I got here. I told the 6 veterans before they left Tulum, I said, hey, I don't understand the whole cosmic thing. I think I'm an ant brain trying to understand physics of what reality is and consciousness is. But what if? Let's play that game. Not to offend anybody's spiritual, religious upbringing, right? What if we were all souls that were standing in line waiting for a human experience? Like, man, we don't have emotion. We don't have this. We don't have hurt. We don't have pain. I hear this human thing is the thing to do, right? And they're all standing in line, and you're looking at your line, and your ticket is a year 3007. You're like, oh. You get a tap on the shoulder. Hey, I got this guy. His soul is dead. He does not want to be in his body. He's done with his life. It has been too hard on him. He's ready to exit. He's had enough of the human experience. But he's programmed to go on for another 30, 35 years. You interested? I can bump you to the front of the line. You still get your place in 3007, but I can put you there. If you were that soul standing in line, you had another 1,000 years to stand in line to get to the human experience. Okay, so what's the catch? Well, he's 54 years old. He's got bumps and bruises, scars. Got a shit ton of money, though. And great kids. A lot of experience. You're going to have all of his memories. You're going to have all of his bumps and bruises. You sure you want this? Yeah. Put me in the game, coach, right? Why shouldn't we wake up every day like that? Put me in the game, coach. Don't let the bass tie you down.
Oh. So I just want to make sure I understand. Because you're talking about this one experience with a macro and a micro dose of Ibegan.
Yes.
That's it.
So after that experience, I came home, and my wife at the time told me I was the man she met 30 years ago. 2 weeks later, she said, never mind. You're better than him. She went for healing. And I'm just going to tell you, she's a beautiful individual. And things went different from there. The same neuroplasticity that can give us greatness, if not guided right, can take that car a completely different direction. And it did. I'll leave it at that. So, what I preach, that the double-edged sword. See good providers with great experience. Know that one size doesn't fit all. My experience once that started happening was I need to learn more. I didn't know enough to protect. I didn't know enough to put the fail-safes in. But I learned one thing. 2 visits before and 2 visits after, probably not adequate. But who's going to pay for it? Got an idea? What do people need before? How do you evaluate what they need? How do you find more than just psychosis, family history of psychosis, or bipolar disorders as contraindications and heart arrhythmias if it's Ibegan? How do we really tease out those that have the avoidant dismissive personality types and relationship types to go, these people need more tools before they go in? Otherwise, you're just going to stir up dust, screw their lives up for a bit, and they're going to fall right back in old ruts. So, there's screening right now, of course, that happens for people going into programs, or you would think. But when the same people doing the admissions are financially motivated to bring you in because it's their small business, I don't think there's enough. I've seen individuals be admitted to programs who are bipolar 2, which, it pushes them into a bipolar 1 type mania. I've seen situations where somebody that had a hallucinogenic type delusional event when they were 18 not come up in the screening process and it trigger a psychotic episode afterwards. And hey, I have a whole different perception of psychosis now than I did before going into this. But I think there's a lot of other things that need to be looked at. Treatment centers need to evaluate and have to have a way to evaluate the tools that people have coming into it. Because if they haven't amassed the right tools coming into the treatment, why is it going to be any different sweeping all that from under the carpet now? If they don't have it, then they need more of an onboarding process to get to that. Western medicine has started to pollute this already, in my opinion. Not just talking about pharma trying to change the molecule and make the psychedelic effects go away, trying to patent it. But one pill fits all, one size fits all. Not everybody needs the same onboarding. I took 4 months. I did my own. Yeah, I had a couple sessions before. Man, that dude was listening to me about stuff that I taught him. But that guy changed my experience with the last thing he told me right before I went in. He goes, just say yes. So I said, hey, man, is there anything else I need to get from you before I go do this? He goes, just say yes.
Like if a door opens or something.
Right. If you're offered to see something or something's uncomfortable, like, and you're like, I don't know if I want to see that again, just say yes. But what I did, that was the most valuable piece of information I got going into it, right? But what I did, I remember when I walked into that treatment center, because it was a 10-day program that I respect what they were doing, from trying to teach the tools that you can take home with you. Teaching the neuroregulation of ice plunges by doing ice plunges, teaching meditation, teaching all this. I don't know that I would have participated in any of that stuff. I'd have been like, no, I'm here for the Ibegan.
Right.
But that thought hit me again going in. Just say yes. And I said yes to all of that. I have seen energy healing now from people that don't even understand what they're doing, and with amazing effects. There's so much I don't understand about this. But I was open-minded enough to at least say, well, let me see. Let me be my own judge of that. Let me not cast that away as, gosh, that's hippie medicine. That's from counterculture. It's LSD stuff. If I would have held that mindset, Eli, I'd be dead right now. 2 years later, I'd be dead. At some point in the last 2 years, I would have died. Don't know what from, but I feel comfortable in telling you, if I wouldn't have found healing, either I would have taken my life or I would put myself in a situation where it would have been taken from me. I was a thrill seeker. I did 11-story free falls. I mean, it's just like I was self-medicating just with different things. So I want to be clear, not everybody needs psychedelic medicine, in my opinion. It's a cheat code for when you're stuck or when you're in a situation that you just can't figure out. Sometimes untangling negative emotions to the past takes a lot of work. And that is a cheat code to kind of go, oh, oh, I get it now. But I would caution people looking into it is to make sure you have the tools, make sure you have the knowledge, make sure you have good providers. If they tell you don't touch anything else for 6 to 12 months, give yourself time to integrate, listen to them.
Don't touch anything afterwards for 6 to 12 months.
Right. Because a lot of the programs I've come into are like, hey, you really don't need to touch any more psychedelics for 6 to 12 months, if ever in your life, but stay away for that long at least. Let some of these new neural pathways that your neuroplasticity is going establish. And if you're constantly going in and stirring the dust up again, what are you doing?
Have you studied all psychedelic medicines as you have Ibegan?
So I have. I cannot tell you to the protein upregulation, downregulation molecules, all areas of all the brain that all of them affect, but I can tell you the commonalities. And I can tell you that I know enough now to even know how little I know. That this is so far out there. Here's one lesson I'll give for your listeners to carry with them. I've approached every issue that I've come through with in this new realm I've been in of, can I explain that from a scientific standpoint, which was my background? Can I explain it from a spiritual standpoint? And if not, can I explain it from a mystic standpoint? Because some people live in one of those three disciplines usually.
How would you distinguish between spiritual and mystic?
So spiritual, good question. Spiritual and mystic, I should say religious, spiritual, and mystic. Be a more traditional spiritual with how we approach things. Because my definition of spiritual is completely different now than it was going into Ibegan.
Okay,
right?
so maybe the way I would hear it is scientific, religious, spiritual.
Right. I think that's a good way to look at it too. Because, well, it comes back to my very point here. It doesn't matter what words you use, you're telling the same story. I'll use an example scientifically. The pineal gland, the third eye, you look at all these things and they're telling different stories from different ways. You look at the commonalities in religions, different players, same storyline. You look at a lot of different things in life. You experience something in your experience where you said you get the flash and you just kind of know what it is, right? Here's what I would challenge your listeners with and your viewers with. I went into my experience thinking that feelings and emotions were primitive and therefore survival of the species. And I came out of it understanding it's a higher form of communication than the vocalization of thought, period.
Say that again.
Feelings are a higher form of communication of thought, well above the ability that vocalization can give it. Let's challenge that for a second. I have a gut feeling about a situation, and I was wrong so many times. Maybe it's because that gut feeling wasn't fine-tuned. Maybe because you weren't at 106.1 FM, you're at 106 and you had a little static in there, right? If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But when you can untangle your past to your feelings, and you can get, this is lime green, this is dark green, this is forest green, and you can actually segregate out feelings for what they are and what they're tied to, you get to trust your feelings a lot more going forward. So again, I'll state it. Feelings are not inferior. They're a higher form of communication than the vocalization is of thought. So thought, feelings, vocalization. I came out the other side of this understanding art for the first time, and music, and appreciating it a lot more. That there's some things that vocalization just can't get right. Just like with what we talked about. Well, would you say mystical or would you say religious? Yeah, I agree. But
Right.
It's all the same thing. Vocalization is just very difficult to translate into the thought that is the true communication, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because
I know I
I
do.
would imagine some
So
people
there's
that
a-
haven't been through it don't.
So I'll say it in a different way, and I think, at least for a spiritual person, a religious person, they'll be able to maybe hear this, or maybe some spiritual as well. There was a rabbi who had on the podcast a while ago who said that every feeling is an angel coming to tell you something. And until you hear what it says, it's going to come in different ways and possibly a little bit louder.
So can I take that for a second and tell you where it touched me? And that's that angels are messengers from God.
Mm-hmm.
God's the central source, the truth. People come up the universe, right? Whatever. Absolutely. Wow. Thanks for that.
Yeah. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Our feelings are our messengers. And the source of truth, depending on your background, your beliefs, could either be God, Buddha, universe, whatever. But yeah, I like that.
Yeah. There's been this thought going through my head, so I'll say it. I saw it on an Instagram video a little bit ago. I'll show it to you afterwards. It was, I guess there are some ways to measure people's states or the energy coming out of them. There's some machines that someone can step into, and they induce feelings like love or joy, and it has a certain, range and strength.
Yep.
And they said they kept noticing these intensities of this, right? Energy bandwidth or energy field, but they weren't sure what they were triggering, and it wasn't love and it wasn't joy. It just kept kind of popping up. But it was much, much wider, much broader, much more intense in a positive way than love or joy. And as they studied it, it took a little bit, they figured out it was authenticity, that every single time someone experienced that, it just sent a vibration through their body that was just a different
is
level.
the highest level, is that authenticity of energy, in my opinion. Truth.
Right. So what I would say is that a few times in this podcast, probably the one that was strongest was when you said about, I forgive him, that there was that feeling coursing through me.
Oh my gosh, I'm just going to unveil lots of things about me today and where I think I'm weird and abnormal, but I know I'm not. Since my experience, I can feel truth, like you meant, like authenticity, right? I for some reason, I always motion right here, and I don't know why. But no, you know it when you know it and you feel it, of that authenticity. Yeah, I thought happiness was the ultimate goal. Then I experienced peace. Then I experienced the power of authenticity. Amazing.
Beautiful. I'll ask the question in this way, and I'll tell you why I'm asking it, because I think it'll bring a beautiful kind of close to our discussion. So the name of the film you're working on with the 6 soldiers is?
Yeah, Healing Heroes, No Mind Left Behind. We just converted it from we were going to do it a 9-episode series. We've converted it to a full documentary movie now for theatrical release this fall.
Awesome. So when someone watches that, maybe you don't want to say, but what do you want the viewer to take away from it? What are you hoping they lands inside them?
What I'm hoping for the viewer is watch the story and maybe understand this going in. 55% of Americans at some point in their life will deal with a mental health issue, which means that 100% of us will either happen to or somebody we love. And I want them to get to this end point after watching these stories. Why is it America has 7 to 9 times the amount of mental health issues as third world countries? It's because we've, so many cases, lost purpose and lost community. One or the other first, it doesn't matter. But we've got to reform community, and we've got to find our purpose. So why is it in 26 years of practice of medicine, we spent so much time, preventative medicine of the human, of the physical body, trying to prevent heart disease, do your labs, do everything else. What the hell do we do for our mind preventatively?
Right.
Well, go exercise a little bit. Yeah, definitely helps. Mind, body, soul. Get it. But one of the participants on the show, Keegan, at the end of it, after teaching them about core values and priorities and everything else, given all these tools, said, why aren't we teaching this stuff in schools? Like, because we used to learn it from our parents. Right? But I guess my point is, we live in a world where we think we're superior in so much in this great country that so many of us have stood by to defend. It's not as great as you think. And I have not met a veteran yet when I ask them the question, do you feel like your government met the promises they gave you? I've not heard a single yes to that ever.
That's awful.
And what I want them to get from watching this, it's okay not to be okay. This show is a lot more than about veterans. It's a lot more than about PTSD not being about war or the military. It's about something that is much bigger than COVID that's going to kill this country. And that's the mental health crisis that no one sees going on or is doing much about to counter. We need to focus more on the stages, educating our people and understanding there's ways to keep your mind healthy. It doesn't have to be a stigma. And it's supposed to get hard sometimes, damn it. Get through it, learn from it.
I have a friend who is incredibly successful in business. And if you would have asked him 5 years ago, his life was going amazing. Money, family, several young kids. Things were great. And a little bit ago, everything in his life started kind of breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And probably going on for about 2 years. And eventually he told me he's going to do a psilocybin journey. And a couple of days afterwards, I spoke to him and he said, "What'd you get?" He said, "Just one thing. You got to get your mind right first." It's a building block of everything. Got to get your mind right first. So what I would say in sitting with you, it's clear that you found your purpose. And that's awesome to see.
I did. Thank you. And I see that you found yours too. And it's great to sit with somebody that resonates the same. There's a lot of people that need to hear that. And I think that are on the verge of that self-discovery too. And you're going to help them with that.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, brother.